escalate a little bit, give a little bit more. But Moses said no. All of us are going. Every one of us, our wives, our children, all of our cattle. At one point he said there will not be one hoof left on the ground. I mean, they were all leaving Egypt. And Pharaoh wouldn't give it all to them. He thought, well, maybe if I give them a little more, then they'll back off. But then the exciting conclusion, Exodus 11:5. Probably the most famous one. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and the firstborn of all the beasts, all the cows, all the horses. All their firstborns were going to be killed as well. The family line puts all their hopes of continuing the family on the firstborn. In a lot of places we see that the firstborn is given a double blessing. They're given a lot of responsibility, and the weight of the family is put on their shoulders. It's their job to make things work when dad's time on earth is over. Isis, as the other gods, was powerless to stop the one true living God. So at midnight, that last night, God moved through Egypt and took each of the firstborn sons, of all the cows and all that stuff too. But he honored the separation of the Israelites. He did not touch one soul of the Israelites. They all got to live. It was ISIS' job to protect them. He was supposed to be the protector of the children, in fact, and it was the children that were being targeted. But couldn't. All the children died. The firstborn children. So God put to shame the gods of Cunam, Hapi, Osiris, Heket, Geb, Kepri, Hathor, Apis, Nut, Set, Neper, Ra, and Isis. It's quite a list. These were all some of the most powerful gods in the Egyptian pantheon. And they were among the most powerful in many cultures. They represented life, abundance, commerce, strength, position on the world stage. And none of them were any match for our God. Not even any, like they didn't even show up. Almost like they didn't even exist. So the Israelites, of course, were finally allowed to leave and escaped by the hand of God. And then there was, of course, one more attempt of Pharaoh to break the promise, and it cost him his life. And then, of course, God gave the commandment to the Israelites. They just got to see all of this stuff, right? And maybe even some of them started to believe in the gods of the Egyptians. They'd been in captivity for a long time. And even though their fathers and their ancestors were teaching them about the living God, it was very likely that they were hearing about these other things that the Egyptians believed in and maybe started trying to believe in those. And so God gave them the commandment. In Exodus 20:11, he came down and he said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." He wasn't saying there are other gods, but I'm number one. He was emphasizing that there were no other gods, that there were not gods that controlled the sun and the water and the crops and the cows. He wasn't saying that these gods they're okay, they're just not as strong as I am. No, he showed that those gods didn't even exist. They did not even show up. They weren't even there. He wasn't saying that don't put other gods before me. He was saying don't make things into other gods that you would put before me. And we think about how many things we can put before God. Those are gods. Those are our Egyptian gods. You know, if you put your hope in your job over God, then that's your God. Your God is named Job. All these weird names, that would be one. And I don't want to serve my job. If I had to lose my job so that I could serve God, that's what's going to have to happen. Now, I hope it doesn't, right? Because I don't know what I'm going to do. But if that's what God has for me, that's what happens. Amen. And that's just the way it's got to be. God does not want us to have anything ahead of him. And he demonstrated his power over these weak, meaningless, nothing deities of the Egyptians, even to the death of many, many of them. And that is all I have for tonight.